Action.
Well, hello, Gordy. Good to talk to you again. My name's Al. We were in a documentary in the spring of 2017 about UFOs and the deception with these things. It's called, in their own words, The Watchman Chronicles by L.A. Marzulli.
Yes.
We had met before then at a UFO meetup group years earlier. And to me, it's no coincidence that you're a very strong Christian and you know the Bible inside out, which has helped me immensely figure out what this stuff is. What are your comments?
Well, there's quite a bit of research on the part of Christians and non-Christians on this subject of UFOs. And recently, even the Pentagon has released some video heads-up display footage of military jets or Navy jets seeing UFOs.
I watched that,
and
yeah.
objects that they cannot explain as being normally terrestrial.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely many governments of the world are acknowledging that the UFO phenomenon appears to be real.
Yeah.
The Ministry of Defense in England with Nick Pope has released information. In Canada we have Paul Hellyer, that he has been given privy to information about the Roswell incident, and that the UFO phenomena, from his perspective, is hard to explain simply by conventional means.
And hard to ignore.
Yeah, he had his own setting as well in
Yeah,
Ontario. So,
that's right.
And did you meet him? Yeah, you.
I met Paul Hellyer twice.
We both met Paul Hellyer, and so. But there's as we know, there's various interpretations of this phenomenon.
There certainly is.
There is the extraterrestrial hypothesis,
yeah,
which is held by many.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some UFO researchers like Jacques Vallée, John Keel, Redfern sometimes, and even Richard
Dolan. Yeah, I chatted with him.
He's sometimes
he's open.
He's open to what is called the interdimensional hypothesis. Jacques Vallée, who his character was featured in Close Encounters, he has a background in astronomy. He's seen UFOs, but he has an interest in how what is seen by people today, there's a parallel to these type of sightings and encounters in the ancient folklore.
Yes, yeah.
And his perspective initially was extraterrestrial, but now he's questioning that hypothesis, and now he believes an interdimensional explanation.
That's due to researching it properly.
Yeah, he's spent a lot of time researching it.
Many
so
years.
We're going to look at these interpretations and theories,
and
see where the evidence leads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I might add, by the Pentagon finally, I might add, coming out and talking about this stuff, the evidence has been overwhelming. I would say even since Roswell, and we're talking 70 years ago, I believe they've had to cover this up. A lot of people that were whistleblowers are now dead because they were coming out and they wanted this information released. You could look at Phil Schneider working these underground bases. Forrestal was thrown out of his hospital window from the 15th floor because he wanted to release this stuff. He was involved with Majestic 12, and it goes on and on. They just don't want this stuff to get out. And if it was good, why would they keep it a secret? There's another gentleman that was taken out by the FBI, and he was in the Naval Intelligence, and his name was it Cooper? What was his first name?
Cooper.
William Cooper, Bill Cooper, a true patriot that came out and said, look, we have information, credible information. Some of these other crashes around the Roswell time, they were finding mutilated bodies inside some of these ships. And right after that, they had to keep this a secret. They had to.
Well, there could be a cover-up because they fear that maybe too much disclosure could cause panic, as it did. I mean, even with the Orson Welles broadcast of War of the Worlds.
Yeah, that showed you how vulnerable we are.
There was some panic and people
for sure.
freaking out.
Yeah.
So I guess there's a reason why some governments want to cover it up. But the phenomenon is so visible today.
It's overwhelming.
Over major cities. There was even sightings over Washington, D.C. in 1952, and that was not completely covered up.
No.
And we have major sightings over major cities of the world.
Mm-hmm.
London, Seoul, Korea, the Phoenix Lights were
Phoenix Lights,
were,
maybe 10,
10,000
15,000 people
10 or
saw it.
15,000 people saw it, including the governor of the state.
Well, he finally came out.
Yeah.
Conscience.
So, because the phenomenon is so, let's say, visible and out there right now, I don't think governments can cover it up, but they have to try to explain it slowly.
Right.
And maybe, give their take on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so...
Whether how true their take is.
Yeah. So, anyways...
I would have to say with this partial disclosure, and there's a lot more coming, but where do they draw the line with this? How are they going to explain the abduction, all the abductions? And I've had multiple abductions, and believe me, I wasn't in bed dreaming, or it wasn't because I watched Star Trek the night before. I had strange markings on me, missing time. I wasn't in bed on some of the occasions when this happened. I was actually driving my vehicle. That's in a video that, once again, I did with L.A. Marzulli. And this stuff is real. These things can manifest. I think the same thing in haunted houses or the same thing on these ships. So that's where I've come to a conclusion. It is evil and demonic and very deceptive. These things are watchers. They watch everyone. I strongly believe they watch everyone. They look at people and use them by their beliefs. If they don't believe in God, they're very vulnerable to these things as space brothers and here to help us, and it is the absolute opposite of that.
Well, in the case of Betty Andreessen, who
was a Christian,
and that book was written also with the help of Raymond Fowler. Both of them became abductees. Mm-hmm. But Betty said that the beings that appeared to her said that they were the watchers. So the word watchers is...
Which ones?
The question is which ones. Well, the word watchers is in the book of Daniel in the Bible, but it's also in the book of Enoch.
Right.
And there are what appears to be fallen watchers and watchers that are not fallen. The fallen watchers are, there's more details about them in the book of Enoch,
right?
Which was part of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and there's been quite a few, it's part of the canon of the Ethiopian Church. But it describes a time before Noah's flood when the sons of God, that are called the Watchers, they came down to earth or were cast out of heaven, and they wanted, some things they couldn't have in heaven, and that's worship. And so some Christian researchers believe that these watchers in ancient times masqueraded as ancient gods, like the Olympian gods, the Sumerian gods, the Egyptian gods, and they created a following, a religious following, and worship, and in certain cultures even human sacrifice.
Yes, in many cultures.
Yeah, but if you look at the origin of the pagan religions, people claim they had encounters and epiphanies with
It's all through history.
Gods. And temples were erected at certain sites where these epiphanies occurred. There were oracles in Greece to the god Zeus and to the god Apollo, especially at Delphi. That was the oracle of Delphi,
right?
Who claimed she under a trance state would channel the god Apollo.
Channel.
Well, they didn't use the term channel back then, but it's a popular term today in the New Age. It
certainly is.
Where people would allow themselves to be possessed or under the influence.
And beware what you wish for when you're channeling these things.
Exactly, and what voices are coming out of you, and what philosophy is coming out of you. So we're not dealing with something new. We're dealing with something that's very ancient, that's mentioned in very ancient books, and in the Bible, and also in even some other religions, other than the Christian religion. They talk about, in the Muslim religion, they talk about the jinn.
Yes.
Okay, in the Celtic pagan religion, they talk about spirits of nature.
Right.
They were called fairies. In the Scandinavian countries, they were called trolls or elves. But these beings had an ability to shapeshift.
Yes.
And in Ireland, some of the fairies were worshipped as gods. Okay?
Because they were supernatural.
They were supernatural beings. They had special powers. And so Jacques Vallée started to notice that in ancient times there were appearances of these beings, and some of them could take on a human form. They could take on a form that's not human. Take on an animal, a hybrid kind of form. But anyways, if you look at the ancient classical religions or pagan religions, you do see this tendency for humans to eventually worship.
Yes.
And seek guidance from these beings they thought were gods.
That's right. And with that also came, and throughout history, was slaughter and sacrifice. And you cannot ignore this. I mean, shows like Ancient Aliens talk about the Mayans and all the slaughter and sacrifice there, but they blame it on the humans. They don't blame it on these entities that want sacrifice.
Exactly.
And it's gone throughout history. They just ignore it on Ancient Aliens.
If you look at the Polynesian cultures,
everywhere.
The European pagan cultures, the Druids, the Incas, the Aztecs,
violence,
the Mayans,
yeah,
all of them had some form of a sacrifice to appease or to please the gods.
That's right.
And so, if these gods were truly benign, why would they demand human sacrifice?
Because
also,
they're not.
Some of these gods were inspired wars between people.
Creating weapons, everything.
Well,
they manipulate humans throughout the ages.
Were considered to be gods of war, like
of war,
Mars
yes.
in the Roman religion.
So true.
Ares was the Greek equivalent. But in the Polynesian world there were gods of war. I found out when I was studying Hawaiian mythology. So these beings definitely appeared to have a fallen nature, and they wanted worship. And this seems to be characteristic of beings that are, let's say, rebellious against God, that want to be like God. They're denied that possibility.
Or jealous of God.
Or they're jealous, or they're denied these possibilities when they were in heaven. So, according to some folklorists, there was a great rebellion, and also the Bible mentions this, and these beings were cast down to earth. And when they did, they created religions. And they had oracles, they had a great following. But we're seeing the same thing today. Within the New Age movement, there's being people that are called channelers.
They're modern day pagans.
Well, actually, the pagan religions is greatly embraced in the New Age movement.
That's right.
But there's this idea that there are beings that are interdimensional that have godlike powers and abilities.
Spirit guides.
They're called devas, spirit guides, ascended masters, ETs. There's a whole menagerie of these beings that are being channeled by people that call themselves light workers, New Agers, or just spiritual people.
People need to understand, if you look deeply into this, that people that say they have spirit guides and channeling and playing with Ouija boards and tarot cards and all this New Age stuff, these entities are very deceptive, and they're soul collectors. They want your soul eventually, and this runs very, very deep, and people need to wake up about this. They're good people at heart. I've met a lot at our UFO meetup group out in Vancouver. I haven't been to that meetup group for years because from having actual abductees there with horrific stories like mine, it's like PTSD on steroids. Then you'd have the rest of the people walking in the room, a lot of them that were New Age, smiling and happy and upbeat, and they are just falling down the wrong path with this stuff. You can give them all kinds of evidence about the Nordics, the Pleiadians, which are actually seen on the same ships that are kidnapping and mutilating and raping people and doing horrific things, and all the people that are going missing. These entities called Pleiadians are seen on the same ships. So what's that mean?
Well, we met an abductee who said what she thought was a Pleiadian alien. It revealed its utter form.
It shapeshifted.
It shapeshifted into a gray. Well, the people that have done research on the fairy phenomena also admit that the fairies were shapeshifters.
Definitely.
They also
all supernatural.
The Reverend Robert Kirk, who wrote the book The Secret Commonwealth, which is mentioned by Jacques Vallée in his book Passport Magonia, he discovered these spiritual beings had an aversion to the things of God, and so that gave him a clue that, yeah, well, if they have an aversion to the things of God, they don't like people reading the Bible.
Something going on there.
They don't like even church bells and hymns. That's an indication of a fallen nature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Definitely.
But when we deal with the UFO phenomena, we are seeing something similar. We have alien entities that are spooked when people invoke the name of Jesus Christ. Or tell these things
it's like
to
casting out demons in the name of Jesus. It's the same thing.
Well, there's possibly hundreds of testimonials now on various websites. The Patsy website of Jim Williamson. Jim Williamson himself is a former abductee,
Mm-hmm.
but he's documented that there are many cases of people that have been able to find deliverance through the name of Jesus Christ, and also protection, and so again, this gives us clues that we're dealing with a fallen demonic
It's spiritual.
or fallen angelic nature.
We dealt with a gentleman that had very, very similar encounters to mine. We won't mention his name, but multiple abductions, implants, being raped by these things, taken on board these ships for the breeding program. I'm not going to go deep into that, but it's absolutely disgusting. And this guy has now realized that these things are not aliens. They're demons and devils and fallen angels and hybrids. And I strongly believe, talking to other credible abductees, these hybrids exist. You just need to listen to David Jacobs, that's researched this for almost 40 years. But you'll have these new ufologists or people looking into these matters thinking, these other people have no credibility, even though they've researched it for 30 or 40 years.
Well, the reason why they question sometimes testimonials is because they're looking for hard physical evidence of a physical abduction.
That's right.
Now, there is physical evidence now,
Mm-hmm.
with strange marks that show up on the bodies.
Had them.
And also implants that have been removed. So L.A. Marzulli has worked with
with
Dr. Dr.
Roger Lear.
Roger Lear.
Yeah.
And they have
Bless his
removed
soul.
up to he's passed away.
Yeah, great.
Unfortunately. But
I wish
they
I met
removed
him.
up to possibly up to 16 or more implants
Mm-hmm.
from people, and these implants have proven to be very physical.
Yeah.
And some of them give off a radio signal.
Very advanced.
They have a strange membrane that's
Yeah.
hard to cut through, but they seem to be able to move through the body
Mm-hmm.
as well. Some abductees, like Woody Strieber,
Mm-hmm.
when they tried to attempt to remove an implant in his body, this thing
Instead of moving
started
around.
moving,
Yeah.
and Lear has noticed this as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dealing with something very physical. Now, some researchers say, well, maybe it's just all some kind of illusion or hallucination, but you cannot explain the physical aspects of this phenomena purely on the basis of delusion or illusion.
That's not good research.
No,
And
unfortunately it's
another thing too, talking about these implants, with my multiple abductions and with witnesses,
yeah.
I might add. And when I was living in the Gatineau Hills, which is in Quebec, north of Ottawa, in the early 90s, all old Indian land. Through research, I've noticed a lot of these entities are showing up on old land, old Indian land. I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yes.
Dan
well,
Aykroyd did a video called Unplugged on UFOs, and the Gatineaus came up. I had never seen the video before. Halfway through the video, it's talking about all these people with missing time and UFOs and that, and I was one of them.
Yeah, well, the Gatineaus were areas of Canada that the Indians used to live.
That's right. Well, they still live up there. Yeah.
But also in the States, there are certain areas where Aboriginal people have seen UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
They claim that these UFOs...
There's hotspots.
Yeah, they claim that there are certain places, sacred places.
That's
like
right.
Sedona, Arizona. You have the Skinwalker Ranch in northeastern Utah.
That's a good one.
Where there's been a lot of different kinds of paranormal phenomena. Some of it appears to be... And actually portals appear to have opened up according to some
I'm glad you brought up the Skinwalker Ranch. So if you if you want to put this in a nutshell, which isn't easily done, you look at the Skinwalker Ranch, go on YouTube, check that out. You'll see UFOs, strange creatures from aliens, the so-called aliens, the Greys, reptilians, cattle mutilations, hauntings. It's all the same stuff. All this stuff is all the same.
Yeah, the Indians of that area too are aware of this area. This
they don't
location,
even want to mention
and they don't even want to go there.
Yeah.
But they claim it's haunted by a being they call a
Shape,
skinwalker,
yes.
who's a shapeshifter
Shapeshifter.
that can take on an animal or a human form.
Extremely evil.
And they're having these giant wolves.
Wolves, glowing red eyes, not good either.
That have been shot at on the property, and they don't seem to die.
No.
And they just run off, and also there's strange orbs that have been seen.
Yeah, that's another thing in haunted houses, orbs. In these UFOs orbs, I mean.
Okay, we're gonna have to let's take a break for right now.
Okay.
And